What's up everybody, welcome back to another video. What we're going to go over today is the package.json file, Node.js, and NPM. We previously already installed Node.js, but now I'm going to show you the package.json file. This will show you some of the dependencies we're going to be using and some of the scripts that we're going to be having to help us create an efficient and productive workflow with our theme. If you can, and if you want to support the project, the WordPress theme development with DevWP, head on over to pixemweb.com, WordPress themes, and make a purchase of DevWP. This will give you all the files, all the code, all the folders, the documentation, and will jumpstart your theme development process. You could also check out my previous videos, and you can see I've been doing this for some time. Alright, so let's head over to VS Code. Alright, so we see we're in the WP test folder. We see we're in the underscores theme, and we have the package.json file already open. So quickly before we change it up, let's take a look at what we currently have here. We have the name, we have the version, the description, the author, the license, the keywords. Very similar to the composer file, but now we're on the package.json file. We have the homepage, the repository, any bugs, the dev dependencies, the right to left CSS config, the plugins, and the scripts that they currently have. This is what we currently have here, but I'm going to copy and paste my code and I'll show you exactly what it is. Alright, so you'll notice that our editor is showing that it's a modified file, and that's because we're using version control. But let's go over this here. We have the name, DevWP, the version number, the description, the author, the license, and these are the dev dependencies that we're currently using. We're going to be using Font Awesome, Auto Prefixer, Bootstrap for the front end. We're going to be using Chocodar-CLI, concurrently, dir archiver, PostCSS CLI, Sass, and Terser. Then these are the scripts that we have here. Now we're going to be creating these folders. So right now they won't actually do anything until we create the various files and folders that we need. But this script right here, what this does, when you type in the command npm run and then copy fonts into the terminal, it's going to use the cp command, the copy command. It'll go into the node modules folder that'll be created. It'll look for Font Awesome. It'll look for the Font Awesome free web fonts. And in particular, it's going to be looking for these two, and then it's going to import them into another folder, which is going to be called web fonts in the root of our theme. We currently don't have that. You can see right here the folders that we currently have. This script, what this does is that it copies all the Bootstrap files in the node modules and it places it within the source, Sass, and then Bootstrap right there. Then we have a build script for the CSS. This is a long one, and this code here for this file, I'll place it on my website so that way you could easily just copy and paste it. If I make any updates to it, it'll be there as well. But what this is going to do, the build CSS file or the build CSS script, it's going to use Sass right here, style expanded, meaning it's going to be human readable, it's not going to be minified. It's going to create the source maps. It's going to use the source Sass style.scss file. It's going to use that file to process. And then when it processes it, it's going to place it in the distribution folder, CSS folder, into a file called style.css. And then we're doing and, Sass, style expanded, source maps, similar type script, but this is going to be for the editor styles. And again, it'll process that file, and then it'll place it in dist css editor styles.css. And then we're doing and, Sass. Now we're going to get the compressed version, source maps. We're going to grab that same file that we did before. We're going to process it, and we're going to place it in the root of our theme. We can play around with this. We can create a different file, or maybe we just create a file that we'll place in our distribution directory. But for now, we're going to leave it in the root. And then we're going to do the same thing, the compressed version, for the editor styles.scss. And we'll place that in the dist CSS folder, and we'll give it the .min.css extension name. And then we're going to use post CSS. We're going to use auto prefixer, and we're going to make sure we're adjusting the current style.css file. And then we'll do the same thing for the editor styles.min.css. We'll use auto prefixer, and then we'll place it in our dist CSS editor styles. We'll place it there. That's a pretty long script, but it gets the job done creating the files that we need. And then we're going to have another build script over here for JS. And this one's going to be different. Previously, we used to use Gulp in order to do some of this process. But instead, I created a specific file that's going to concatenate all the JavaScript files, and then it's going to minify it and then place it within the appropriate folders. This gives us the ability not to have to use another dependency. Then it gives us the chance to really code some custom JavaScript for our development purposes. Then we have a general build script that's going to type out npm run build CSS and npm run build JS. So basically, when you make any changes, you could run either of these individual commands. If you're only working on the CSS one day and another day you're working on the JavaScript, you have the option just to run one of these scripts right here. But if you have a day that you're working on both the CSS and the JavaScript, you could simply run the build script. Now, we could also watch our SCSS file itself and any of the Sass files within the source directory to see if there's any changes. And if there are changes, then we'll automatically have it run the build CSS script right here instead of having to type out the command itself. So you have a couple of options. So that's the watch CSS. Then we have the watch JS. It does the same thing. It watches for any changes within our source JS, all of our JavaScript files, looks for changes. And if there are any changes, then it runs the build JS script right there. Then we have a general watch. It's going to run them concurrently using this one. It's going to run these two scripts, the watch CSS and the watch JS. And if any of them change, then it runs their scripts themselves. Then we have the two scripts over here. This one's for development purposes, when you want to archive the actual theme itself, but still keep some of the files and folders. So we have the dev script. It'll run dir archiver. It looks at the source, the destination, and it'll place devwp-dev.zip. So you know you have the development version. And then we have some files that we're going to be excluding over here in some folders. Again, we're excluding the lock.json and the lock file over here. Reason why we're doing that is because I always want to test to make sure that the code is working with the latest versions of Composer and Node.js. But typically you would actually track or would include the lock files for development purposes. And we're going to be excluding the cache file for both the PHP code sniffer and PHP unit. Now for the production version, we changed that around. We have the production script, dir archiver, source, destination, and we give it a different prefix here to prod for production. And then we exclude all of these. Some of these, since they're for development purposes, they don't need to be in the final product. All right, so this is the package.json file. Let's go into terminal. We'll go into that folder and we can type out npm install. And what this is going to do is it'll take a look at what we have here in our dev dependencies, and it'll go through the process of installing them into our project. This can take some time, so let it run its course. So we see here it added 193 packages. It audited 194 in 25 seconds. 36 packages are looking for funding, and it found 0 vulnerabilities. Now, this is part of the reason why I'm creating a lot of custom code for this, because when you use some dependencies that are not being actively maintained, you have an increased likelihood that there'll be some vulnerabilities. So I've been moving away slowly of using some dependencies that aren't really needed if we can create some custom code ourselves. All right, so if you need to update any packages, you can run the command npm update. It'll scan your system and let you know if there's anything that needs to be updated. All right, let's take a look at this again. Look at the code, make sure that yours matches, or just go to my website and you can copy it there. I'll leave a link in the description. But now we have our package.json file set up, and you see we have the lock.json file here as well. You also see it's modified. So now, go back into terminal. You could do this, which is changing directory into the terminal, or you could leave one terminal open for the theme and then create another one. So you have 2 terminals open, and this will be in the root. So now you can look at git status. You see what's been modified. You can git add that file individually. I showed you previously how to use git add with the asterisk to just add anything that's new, or you could just add the individual file that's represented here. Now git status again. You see that's ready to be committed. So git commit -m. And now we added that. Git status, and we're good to go. Alright, so we updated this file here. You see it's no longer modified. We're working on a clean tree, and that's that. So now what we have to do in our next couple of videos is start the process of reconfiguring underscores. Because if you see here, we're using our theme itself, the DevWP theme. Now again, if you want to change it to a different name, make sure it represents the name you want to have. So it could be Demo WP or whatever the name of the theme you're going to be having. We're going to work on that because we have it referenced within our composer file and our package.json file. And when we go through the process of linting, as we saw before, we're going to want to make sure that everything matches the way it should in terms of our variables and in terms of our function names and file names and folder names. All right, so definitely check out my website if you want to just copy and paste this script over here, the code for this file. I'll leave a link in the description. Or if you want to support the project, you can get a copy of DevWP and you have all the files and the folders and documentations for that. Once we configure underscores to have all the files and folders that we need, then we can actually demo running these scripts over here. But that's coming up in a future video. All right, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification icon. And as always, thanks for watching and happy coding.